Welcome to How I Embraced the Suck, a podcast where you get to hear from veterans what life in the military is really like. I am your host, Walt, and before we start, you should know that I do not censor the show in any way. You have been warned. And we'll see what
waveform. I see your waveform.
Check. Yeah, now I got something. Okay, I feel better. Whew.
Check. Yeah, mine's there too.
Oh, nothing for Dane. Okay, perfect.
I see a little bit. I don't know why it's not louder.
I'm just kidding. Okay. Yeah, and I can bump it up in post. So, cool. Yeah. I think Scott just messaged and said he's almost home, so he'll be hopping on. Hopefully that will work pretty well. All right. Welcome to a special Memorial Day episode. Today's going to be a little different. We're going to have multiple return guests in more of a round table format. And some are going to be dropping in or out. And we'll just kind of go with the flow. Usually I present the guests kind of semi-anonymously. Like I don't really advertise who they are. Because I want the listener to listen on the grounds of them being a vet. And just based on that, and not based on who they are or what they got going on. In this one, it's gonna be a little different. We're gonna have introductions up front right away, and go from there. So let's jump into it. First, we got Dane, who is here because he's not only the slowest talking podcaster that I listen to, but he's also pretty near the funniest. Dane,
am I? Well, I guess I like that backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
That was nice. So.
We'll see how it goes. You want to introduce yourself?
Definitely a 2x playback speed podcast.
Yeah, 2.5.
And
2.5.
it's still slow. You're like, would this guy just hurry up and say what he's trying to get at? No, I did record one just the other night, and there was about a good 3 minutes where I was talking really fast. I was like, what's going on? But so I am Dane. I run the Obtainable Freedom Project, and you can just go to the obtainablefreedomproject.com, and that has everything you could find. So my podcast, I do a little bit of writing. And then my son has a YouTube channel that's based on homeschooling. So our thing lately has been him building these giant projects and then like condensing them down to his, so it's like sped up, and it's really cool. And he's going to turn 9 on Tuesday actually, but he barely asked for any help, and he's building these really complex projects that we're finding him. So that's on there too. You can sign up, subscribe to my email. So it's a good place to find me.
You're from my viewpoint, you and your brother are hilarious. Like just your interaction is, you guys are a riot.
There's sometimes where I remember I was really excited about a topic, and I just kept asking him what he thought, and he was just like, "Yes." It's like you're giving me nothing. So
yeah,
he hasn't been on for a while, but I'm trying to get him back on soon.
Yeah, well, cool. And then now we got Josh, who's here for the Rip Fuel and Melodious Tunes. How's it going?
That is correct. If I start busting out in a random tune that I sing, don't pay any attention to that.
I'll probably mute it in post.
I don't have any podcasts or anything like that. I'm just here for the shits and giggles.
Sweet. Well, yeah. So
is you breaking out into song something that could happen?
It quite possibly could. Depends.
Fingers crossed.
I'm never coming back on if that does not happen.
You're assuming that there's going to be a re-invite, Dane. Easy.
There are certain triggers. If you guys say a certain trigger, like a certain phrase, and then I'll just start busting into the song that has that phrase in it. My wife does this all the time. She'll say something like, can you take that back to the front? And I'm like, back to the front. you will do what I say, and start singing it. And she's like, I fucking knew you were going to start singing. There's just certain triggers that do make me need to break out in song.
Yep. Yeah. Well, cool. Like I say, some guests will be hopping in, but the format today, this is a Memorial Day special, so we're just talking about Memorial Day, kind of thoughts, experiences, memories, reflections, whatever everybody has, and then also the originally my thought for the show was the reason why I named it "How I Embraced the Suck" was because my goal was to have each guest tell a story about a time that they embraced the suck, where something just really sucked, and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to embrace it, deal with it, and push through. That didn't work out because of the format of the show, but I thought that for this, it might not be a bad thing to try, and we'll see how that goes. So those are kind of the few topics, and then also because we're a podcast, have each guest recommend a podcast, preferably one that's smaller than their own if they have one that they recommend. So kind of spreading the word for smaller podcasts, because as we know, it's hard to get started as a show, and to get a little boost is always kind of nice. So anyways, Memorial Day, who wants to go? There's my spiel.
Well, the embrace the suck part's going to be pretty easy because you're having mostly Marines on, and they're just going to say, I enlisted in the Marines, the end.
And I lived, and I embraced it.
I was thinking it was kind of like the whole culture of it. At the same time, I loved it, and all my favorite people are grunts, but especially Marines, but like everyone was just so angry all the time. And especially when you were new, it's like every day they just tried to make it suck for you. It's like that there was no fun involved whatsoever for a lot of it. So a lot of just living in the environment sucked a lot, even though I had a lot of fun with it, and now I'm friends with everybody. But there'd be times and just stupid little shit that would happen, and they'd make you do that was just like, this whole thing sucks. Like the training sometimes was the best part of it. It was when you were just sitting around doing nothing that it sucked. So
that you had to entertain yourself.
No, they would find ways, especially when you're like a boot and you're brand new, they would find ways to use you for their entertainment, like the seniors would. So then you'd just be doing stupid shit all the time. So
yeah, like a good example of that, like when I got to 1st Recon Battalion after going to ARS, you're just a roper until you pass the NDOC, and you show up in your alphas, and the duty says you need to start doing 3,000 8-count bodybuilders on the front lawn, ready, begin. And you're out there in their alphas, and you have to do 3,000 8-count bodybuilders. And they're all drinking, sitting in kiddie pools, fucking with you. They're like, you guys look hot. So they start spraying with the hose. You're in your alphas this whole time, and you don't get done until you do 3,000 8-count bodybuilders.
How long does that take?
That's sort of your welcome to 1st Recon Battalion or company at the time.
How long does that take?
I don't really remember. I do know it was pretty darn late when we finished up, like maybe midnight or so. But the duty was sitting there watching us to make sure we did every single one of them. And then randomly, it was like a Friday, so everybody's drinking and lounging around in little kiddie pools and stuff at the dorm. So they're all there to welcome you.
I never had to do that. So that
that's just one tiny example,
Mm-hmm.
That's the peacetime suck.
Yeah. Is there a difference between peacetime and wartime suck? I'll ask the dumb civilian question.
Suck, there's a purpose to it, right? So it's not as bad. Peacetime suck is the worst because there is no purpose to it.
Sure.
I mean, I guess you could kind of say there's a purpose to it, but at the time, it doesn't seem like it.
And we were talking earlier before we started recording about like all the shit that you had to do with your uniforms and polish your boots, and they care about your grooming standards a lot. But I got to skip all of that because when I got in, it was like, all right, we're building up to go to Iraq. We got back. We're building up to go to Afghanistan. All we cared about was being in the field and getting ready for that. So we didn't have to really deal with all the stupid grooming standard shit that most people have to go through. And that was nice. Like, even in your barracks, everything has to be perfect. You know, they come and check it once a week. You got to clean for hours and hours and hours. And when we got back from Iraq, we were put into barracks that were supposed to be torn down like 10 years before that. And they just never were. And so guys would literally punch holes in the wall, and our higher ups didn't even notice because it was such a shitty place that you could do whatever you wanted to. I remember my gunny, the first inspection day, came and was like looking at the shower. He's like, "What's the shit around it?" I was like, "Gunny, I cleaned that for like 3 hours and I can't get it off." And then he just kind of took a deep breath and was like, "Yeah, these places suck," and just turned around. So that part was awesome because I didn't have to deal with that shit either.
Yeah, luckily where I was, it was a little bit insulated from a lot of that bullshit too, like the whole field days. And I mean, technically we kind of loosely did them, but not really. We didn't care where I was. We didn't care about starch and press camis and shine boots and all that kind of stuff. You would get a little bit of it because you can't be too insulated from the rest of the Marine Corps. Really, the only time it would pop out for us from a grooming standard thing would be if we'd go to other areas, right? You know, so we'd be heading down to Horno to do some pool work at their pool, and that was fucking life or alley. And so we all had to we all knew that when we went there, we couldn't just call each other by our first names. We actually had to call our platoon commander by his rank, you know, instead of, "Hey, Eric, what's up?" You know, or we would get fucking annihilated down there by some crusty first sergeant who had literally nothing better to do than fuck with people. So it was kind of nice. You know, I joked in the last podcast that we did that when I got out of the Marine Corps, you know, the 2 cans of boot polish they give you at boot camp, I still had, each of those cans had like half the boot polish left in them, you know. Whereas for Fleet Marines at the time, I mean, that would have, especially if you were in an infantry group, you would have gone through that in like 3 months.
Doesn't sound like fun at all. And
No.
there's even aspects of that when you do deploy, depending on where you go. So like when I went to Iraq, I was mostly in, well, I guess about half the time I was in huge bases where a bunch of different units were, and a lot of just admin people. So you'd have to be really careful, like he was talking about. But then when I was in Afghanistan, our patrol base was like 13 people, and that included our doc, our minesweepers, and our interpreter. And so when we weren't out patrolling, I was in Adidas shorts and flip-flops. You know, so it was awesome. And if anybody was coming to meet us, we would know in advance, so we could just run and change really quick and shave or whatever, you know, and make sure we looked okay. But that only happened like 6 times throughout the whole deployment, probably. So the other time we just got to run around and look like whatever we wanted. So makes it a lot less stressful. Like there's enough shit to deal with already, but then when you have to worry about being freshly shaved every morning, or your camis are looking right, it just adds to it.
That was kind of a nice part. Like I always say, I had the perfect enlistment, and because I was mostly at wars or schools the entire time. But what was even better was it was when the 4 wars were just kicking off. So like, you know, I went in Afghanistan right at 9/11. I was in Darwin, Australia, and we set sail, and immediately we're in Pakistan, running ops into Afghanistan. And at that point in time, it was all cowboy land. So I grew a beard and had long hair, and no one gave a shit. We wore beanies and shades, and nobody gave a fuck at all, right? It was cowboy rules. And kind of the same thing with Iraq. I mean, they tried to do some of that, like, because there were a lot more brass with us at the time. But even there, I mean, there were no bases, there were no any of this. You were literally sleeping in ranger graves that you dug every night. And so if you hadn't shaved in a few days, who gives a shit, And everybody was that way, whether they were a company commander or they were a PFC. And so I like that because, again, none of those fuck games went on, I grew my hair out during Iraq, but what's kind of funny is there was this first sergeant who insisted that Marines get haircuts, and we're in the middle of a fucking war, idiot, and kept putting it off, and he kept harassing me like, a person, you got to get your hair cut. He's from Puerto Rico, and you could hardly understand him. And
I had one of those.
You can hardly understand any first sergeant and aboves, right? They all are issued a speech impediment when they become first sergeant. But so I got pissed off one day, and I was the guy that would cut everybody's hair, because I'm kind of artistic and I could do a good job and just whip it out. And so I just fucking just buzzed the whole fucking thing off. And it was right when we got to Baghdad, and we were kind of like not moving nonstop all the time anymore. And so all the photos of me from that time, I'm fucking shaved head, even though 99% of that time I had long hair, But I just get pissed off, so I just buzz the whole thing just to shut him the fuck up. Jesus. Is that good enough for you now, First Sergeant? Oh, that looked very much better,
You have a stray hair. You just leave one hair off the top of your head.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Mm-hmm.
When you're at war, like, really, you shouldn't have time or really care about shit like that. And then, when we go to war, we just stay there forever. So then it just invites time to do nothing because we don't have any mission. So the longer we're there, the worse it gets. What was that?
Yeah, the garrison starts to creep back in.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the commanding officers are still from, or the upper enlisted and even officers are still from the time where they remember garrison and that being a huge important thing. And now when they're suddenly not doing war anymore, they fall back to what do we do? Well, they know exactly what to fucking do. Mess with people, obsess about camis and boots and shaves and haircuts.
It was my least favorite part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I just want to be out here learning how to do shit or actually going out and do shit and not have to worry about being yelled at for there being a hole in my camis or some shit like that. But...
Yep. Or IPs. Good God, that was a huge thing. Is that a thing? Was that a thing with the new camis too?
Remind me.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Little threads that would be hanging like from the stitching, and there would be a little tiny thread. They would fucking obsess about those, and they called them IPs or Irish pennants. And they'd be like, "Oh, devil dog, I guess we don't care about ourselves, and we just want to disrespect the Marine Corps by having a bunch of fucking Irish pennants that I can rappel off of, huh?" It's like, oh my God, dude, calm down.
It's actually impressive how angry somebody can be over something that actually does not matter whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's because they have nothing else to be angry about, so they got to find something.
Probably have a shitty life back home, and they're just like, well, I'm going to go and be a dick to everybody because it'll make me feel better.
Yeah, I'm on my third divorce, and I'm going to take this out on somebody.
That happens a lot. There's a lot of divorces. I think when I was in Iraq, when we were coming back, 90% of the people I knew of who were married were getting a divorce by the time we got home.
because Jody was fucking their girls.
There's a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
I feel horrible for this guy, but it's kind of funny. He got married. What was this? I think right when we got home from one of the deployments, he got married, went on leave. She had the baby. And then right when we got back, the first thing they asked is who's getting a divorce. And he raised his hand. And he was, I think he was Mexican. And his wife was white and the baby was black. So it was like, yeah, I'm out. I'm done.
And there's always those stories like on floats, where some wife or whatever will send a VHS tape like, oh baby, I miss you so much, play this. So they pop it in the VCR and it's a video of her getting railed by some dude, while he's on float. And I fucking told you not to go on that float, as if you had a choice, right?
Really? That's why? That's fucked up.
Yep. Yeah, having a Marine Corps, if the Marine Corps wanted you to have a wife, they'd issue you one. That was kind of my philosophy. I fucking hated brown baggers, The Marine Corps is all about living in the barracks and hating life together. If you want to have a family, get the fuck out of the Marine Corps. Don't do that. It's not fair to your family.
I agree. I did get married in between my deployments, but I totally understand what you're saying. We've been married, what, 12 years now?
But you got out, right?
Yeah.
And when Det 1 kind of stood up and they started going into SOCOM and we went down there and they had all these toys and funding and everything. And I thought for about 5 seconds about re-enlisting, but it's really a live the life thing. And that isn't fair to anybody. And so I went ahead and bounced and ended up marrying my wife. So yeah, I wasn't going to be married and in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, that's probably good advice for anybody who's listening. Even though that I got married really quickly and it right before a deployment, and it thankfully worked out because my wife is awesome. But anytime anybody else was like, yeah, I'm going to get married, I'm like, don't be a fucking idiot. Don't do that. Just because it worked out for me, it doesn't mean it's going to work out for you, Yeah.
If you want, get a contract marriage so you can go live out in town, but don't do a real one.
Don't do a real one.
Just give her TRICARE, fucking get your BAH, go move out in town, and just let her do her thing and you do your thing, and then just divorce her when you get out. Don't go looking for true love, right?
I know a guy who did that.
Oh yeah, we all do.
Then he was mad when they got a divorce.
Yeah.
I remember that being a thing, but
so I'm always impressed. I'm always impressed when I hear of someone who made it to like corporal or something without getting married. I'm like, oh, well, good for you. You held off.
Yeah. Well, I walked in at kind of a perfect time because I literally did kind of have a contract. She was my girlfriend at the time. I didn't get salty about it though. Just it ended actually as bad as well as those things could, and it helped me pick up staff. I'm pretty sure that is a requirement.
for
at
the
least
listener,
one divorce to pick up staff.
Yeah. For the listener, Scott just joined us. Scott, we got Dane and Josh here. Dane, and then if you just want to introduce yourself, I'll just say that Scott's here just because we need an old guy to keep the kids in line. But if you want to kind of tell the listener a little bit.
I'm an old man too, so
yeah, you don't show it as much.
Yeah.
Ouch.
This is all toothpaste. This is all plain toothpaste.
Yeah, no, I'm Scott. I was a Marine for 14 years, Marine reservist, 14 years. I joined in 2002. Well, went to boot camp in 2003, signed papers in 2002, and got out around 2014. So yeah, that's me. I'm just Twitter lunatic mainly.
In a fucking boot. I got out in 03.
My timeline's all messed up, apparently. What do I know?
We got
What's
a
that?
wide range here.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah,
we just need who do we need around? We need Luke's dad around to.
We need to. I think we've got from 99 to when did you get out, bud?
14. Yeah.
When Luke and Typo get on, I think they joined after I got out, actually. So I think we're looking at 16 or 18, something like that.
Man, we got 20 years of service there.
Yeah, quite a spread. I think Typo's dad got out. Who got in first? Josh, did you get in? You got in first?
I went in November of 99.
99. I think he got out like early 90s. Typo's dad. Yeah. So if he was on, it would be
Shane Hazel might be able to fill in the gap too.
Yeah.
If you can get him to show.
Yeah, probably busy guy. Cool.
Yeah.
So Scott, we're just kind of like shooting the breeze, really. I was kind of thinking, just like thoughts about Memorial Day and whatnot, but it just kind of rolling with it. So we'll see. Some guys are going to be rolling in, hopefully, and some are going to be bouncing out, and we'll see how it goes. So
yeah,
I bitch about how dumb Garrison is, mainly.
Well, fortunately, I dodged most of that.
Yeah,
that honestly, like, the funny thing being a reservist, like, I think I talked about this on your show, like, it's kind of deployment only Marine Corps. Like, you only get like a few months taste of garrison bullshit, like, before each deployment, or if you're like on a fob, like a big like Camp Cupcake type place. Otherwise garrison bullshit's kept to like 1 weekend a month of showing up and looking pretty, or do like maybe one or two uniform inspections a year. It wasn't until my last 3 years or so in where I was on ADOS orders that I had to maintain a barracks. But even then, it was right before I picked up staff. I was a senior sergeant. I wasn't living on base, and I just kept a barracks room empty. Wasn't that So that was the only time I really had to do. It was the last 3 years of getting screamed at every time. So I worked at TCOM, or we fell under Training Education Command at Quantico. And every time, what the worst part of that is, right when all the news was about sexual assaults and whatnot, and they were under scrutiny, But TCOM is like geographically spread out. Only the headquarters is there, and then like every recruit training, every like SOI, all of those fall under TCOM. Like even MCB MCB, not MCB. What am I trying? MCT West falls under that. What that meant for us, though, was that every single sexual assault that happened, even at like comm school all the way in 29 Palms, the CG needed somebody to yell at. So he would just call in the entire TCOM staff that was on Quantico and scream at us for about 3 hours because some girl got felt up in 29 Palms during comm school. You know what I mean? So I got a little taste of that. There were 3 or 4 times where literally it was just like a 3-hour scream fest at us just because he was pissed off at the world. I wish I was joking, but
here's the thought. Like, for how much wasted time there was when I was in, and all the stupid shit that we had to go through that meant nothing. Like, if everyone actually just trained and ran through gun drills, or even like McMap or something like that, when you were training, and you'd wake up and train instead of just sit around and wonder what the fuck you were going to do all day and wonder when you were going to get off. If you're actually being productive in skills that you would apply at war, they could have come up with very highly trained killers instead of a bunch of angry drunk guys who just want to kill people. And really, that's what was produced.
Isn't that part of the training, right? That's why people that train dogs for dog fights beat the dogs and starve them and stuff, right? Is to get them good and fucking pissed off. And that way, when they say, go fucking kill them, all of that anger is going into killing. So maybe it does have a purpose.
I know that that's the idea behind it, but I don't know if that's effective. It probably, I mean, the Marine Corps is effective, so maybe I am entirely wrong, but I would have enjoyed it more if it was the other way around. They could still be angry and make us do dumb shit, but man, I was just extremely surprised how, and we did do a lot and we trained a lot, but there's just so much wasted time doing nothing and having to be there while doing nothing. So,
I mean, you're describing a lot of work for senior people and officers planning that just what do you expect them not to get their weekends off and hold a higher standard and find ways to keep you gainfully employed? You know how hard it is to lock on a training area? They might have to make 3-4 phone calls in a day.
And then organize the ammo. God, jeez.
Yeah. And then you're gonna miss out on important training like sapper and let's see, what else could you miss out on? The food and what other classes do you have to get every year? We used
discrimination.
At least, discrimination. God, there were so many. That's not even scraping the barrel.
Thank God we did. I was in it at the time where we didn't have any of that shit. The most we talk about discrimination was you're all equally worthless, and there were light green and dark green. And that's it.
Oh, you need the 4-hour safety stand down every 70. Before every 72 or 96. Before summer, there's the 300 days of summer safety day that you have to watch out for and make sure everyone knows not to fucking drive, 100 miles an hour down the wrong side of the interstate on a motorcycle with their hair on fire.
There's a lot of that. I remember I had to teach a discrimination class. We had one day for all these stupid classes we had to go through. And they made me teach it. Yeah. And I was just like, somebody time me, and I don't even think it was 60 seconds. It was just don't be mean to women or whatever, but it's we're grunts. I don't think there was any Marine women who worked on the base. There probably was a few, but you never saw them. And then it was just you can't discriminate for color, and it was we all love each other. This is a stupid class basically. And I don't know, I think I did a really good job. I had all the higher ups laughing. It was short and to the point, and I didn't have to stand up there for very long.
And not a single PowerPoint was used.
No. It's just I don't want to do this, This is what you get for making me teach class.
Thank God I missed out on that time.
Yeah, you didn't miss much. It just got worse and worse as time went on too. It started out seeming stupid, but by the end of it, by 20, like I said, by I can't even imagine what it's like now. We need to get somebody that's in now around just to give us some idea of how much time they spend. It's got to be full weeks, several full weeks worth of maybe not in one block, but in mandatory whatever nonsense training collectively. Counter extremism,
Can you imagine Josh going back right now and somebody telling him what he said was a microaggression?
Counter extremism in an extremist organization. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I had to.
My whole time in, I think I only really interacted with 2 WMs the entire time. One was, the one that was in the admin office that I had to go see every once in a while to do general admin paperwork shit. Battalion level admin, not company. All the company was male. And then I think that's it. There might have been one other one. I don't know. Even on float, I was on a ship that was 100% male.
When I was at Quantico, one of the things I got tapped for at some point was this so like when you're doing, for whatever reason, it's called an institutional review board. So like this is technically like anytime you're doing some kind of like sociological study or whatever, it's one of those like, this is like even in like, let's say a college doing a study on kids, doing will they electrocute each other or whatever. They're supposed to, because of that kind of stuff, that old, the one where they
Milgram
tested people. Yeah. The Milgram experiment. Thank you. Like, because of those kinds of things that went a little too extreme, let's say, they have to do these things where they're going to have like people that could potentially like basically get people's feedback on what are the potential risks we're putting people through. It's a stupid thing. But when they were doing the study on, if you remember, probably it must have been 2014-15 when they were talking about adding women to combat arms. It was after the first females graduated SOI, but before any of them graduated ITB, because I was still at Quantico when that happened. But they were talking, they did that study where they were trying to find combat efficiency of like, is it female or like females degrade combat efficiency? So do they, like they had some, like they had some go through arty school, and then they had like an all-female battery or like an all-female gun, a mixed gender gun, and then an all-male gun. And they did the same with like a few of the other combat arms. They had like a tank crew, and so they're doing this experiment to see like, does it degrade efficiency? And more or less, I was just like a placeholder. There were some higher ups in the room. I can't remember all, but in the subsite, physiologists, like psychiatrists and whatever, but they needed to be like an enlisted representative from each MOS or whatever that was relevant. So like I just got tapped for it. I was just lucky enough to be stuck in the room for an hour and a half while they bullshitted about like, well, what tasks are in this? Are they going to be lifting something over this weight repetitively? But the upshot of it, or interesting part, was like seeing how much they were gerrymandering it, to make sure that the test was going to be something they knew the females could pass, and even then they lost, you know what I mean? Even then it was clearly that they were less efficient, and still it was all, the writing was already on the wall before it all started. It's like, we're going to do a study that finds that you can integrate women into the combat arms and it will not be worse. But the really interesting part, and I had this discussion many times, was the part where they talked about how many more injuries females experience. Like, they had the information from SOI. One of the big problems is before they had any females graduate SOI or ITB, they had dozens and dozens of them with like mainly hip stress fractures that had to be medically retired. Like, they just got them out of boot. They had these girls that enlisted, just got out of boot camp. And then they were like, congratulations, you were top PFT in boot camp. We're going to run you through SOI and see if we can get you to pass. They also had to have a staff NCO more or less be their like barracks mate all the way through to just coach them and hold their hand through the entire process to get any of them to pass through SOI. And then, so they had like a 1-to-1, like, I'm your personal instructor resource for you. And it was a staff NCO. Like, and even then, the number 73 is coming to mind for some reason, but it was a couple of dozen before they got any of them to graduate. That just like, a lot of them got medically retired or otherwise had to go through a bunch of recovery. And so you go through all this trouble of training someone, all these resources into it, and still it took a lot for them to figure out, how can we get him to pass? What standards do we have to lower or change? Do we really need to do a 20-mile hump at the end of, as one of the as part of the culminating exercise, because they're going to break if we do a 20-mile hump? Or can we lighten the pack by this much? So all these things, you're talking about the PFT standard. That's only like one part of it. All of the little training tasks, they were micro studying like how much stuff goes into the pack before the end of the SOI ruck march. You know what I mean? Before that, to lower the weight, change this, change that. It was interesting to get that view, and also to just hear the stats of how many injuries they were getting just when they were tinkering with this. And I'm very curious how much they had to basically work the numbers down to an acceptable rate. Because if Mothers of America heard that, 70% of the females that went through combat arms training of any type were just washed out and had to go back home and tell them they were medically retired as a PFC, and that was going to be their entire military experience, was going through boot camp and then catching a, PFC's retirement check for the rest of their lives and free medical. I wonder how much that still happens and how much they just had to degrade the training for that,
Are they still pushing for that?
I mean, I think it's just part of it now, isn't it?
I don't know.
I mean, I'm pretty certain that that's why we need somebody who's still who's still in to tell us, are there female and grunt battalions or not? I don't even know anymore.
I fucking hope not.
Well, how does that work? Like, you know what? If you're a bad bitch and you want to hang with the bros and you can do everything with them, then fucking go right on ahead, Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there are certain components to it that okay, what do we got to figure out here? A lot of the camaraderie and stuff that comes about is getting fucking hammered at the barracks on a Friday night and being stupid, or, tenting up with some guy when it's fucking raining and you're sleeping in the mud out in the field. Mm-hmm. How does that work when you stick a female in that equation? You know what I mean?
Just take drunk Marines plus vagina.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
If they can hang cool, have at it. I'm sure there's tons of bitches out there that are just as capable as I ever was in the world. But it's all those like little things that they just need to be able to gel in as well that, mm-hmm. Might create some complexities to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Think about all the like mental health issues so many guys have after that. Well, I guess that just pertains to the entire military. I was just going to say we don't need to start adding women to that abuse as well afterwards. But
how many times have you dry humped or been dry humped by a Marine in an infantry, unit? Like fucking daily, How many times are you sitting there and somebody comes and puts their dick on your shoulder and says, "Hey," and you turn and you see their dick on your shoulder? You know what I mean?
They started.
How do you stick a woman in an environment like that and have shit not bad happen?
When dudes are hiding their dicks in boxes and jacking off to stay awake.
Or the comment like, "Hey, can you tell what time it is on my watch?" And it's over the wrist. That is like nonstop.
Well, some of it, I remember it being a story. I feel like, but a guy, one dude I know caught a sexual charge for teabagging another dude. You know what I mean? Which like...
That would be a little far. I'd probably stab a motherfucker to death if he teabagged me, but...
Yeah, they tried, they part of it was they tried to clean up all that shit. And I suck all the fun out of life,
And people wonder how grunt units become like that, but it's just like you're going to war and you might die. Like that's the reality of what you have to accept. So once you accept you might die and you're just, you don't know what you're going to be put into, everything else just doesn't seem like a big deal at all when it comes to joking around the dark humor of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always say, what's taboo when you're out murdering people? That's what your job is, to go murder people. I mean, what's more taboo than that, right? Nothing.
Yeah, that actually makes me think of another thing that I've been mulling over that sort of, and I think of it as sort of one of those social costs, like do you think people that join have, I'm terrible at this, like, not, what's the word? For when people have longer time horizons and people have shorter time horizons, like people that like
time preference.
Time preference. Thank you. Like I always get it backwards: higher time preference or lower time preference. But do you think joining and coming up and confronting the realities of being in the Marine Corps and potentially killing and being killed decreases people's time preference, makes them start behaving like doing dumber things because of that? Or do you think people that tend to have those lower time preferences join because of that and it just feeds back on itself? Like, I sometimes think that like what you get when you have them, when you have Marines that are all, especially at, more of the combat arms, especially, that they tend to behave so badly on base, off base, drunk, depravity, all that shit. Would that happen if their time to preferences hadn't lowered? You know what I mean? If they hadn't been like, well, fuck it, I'm going to die anyways, I might as well do this. Because I know I justified some shit that way before deployments. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes to risk assessment, right? So, the guy that has a lower sensitivity to risk is definitely going to be the one that joins, and he's also going to be the same guy that thinks that it's not that bad of an idea to slam a 12 pack and then go driving around, or let's jump off the third floor of the barracks with a fucking sheet. It'll act like a parachute, right? But those are also the same guys that you want that are willing to run out in front of a bunch of bullets coming and think, I'll probably make it. Shitty risk assessments. So,
or I don't care if I make it. It's going to be net beneficial for other people. You
correct.
know what I mean?
Correct. Yep.
I think it's definitely amplified though. So
yeah,
because when you see everybody starts acting more insane the longer they're in. For the 4 years that I was in, they started just doing dumber shit. So I think being in that situation and that environment and knowing you're going on another deployment, not knowing what's going to happen, it definitely does something to your brain.
Yeah, that's that phobia exposure training, right? So like if somebody has an extreme spider phobia, for instance, like a psychologist will say, okay, the solution is not to show you a spider, right? Because you're going to fucking crash. But it's going to be beneficial if I show you maybe an image across the room that kind of looks like a spider, right? And get you used to that, the exposure. Then the next step is I maybe make it a clearer image that it is definitely a picture of a spider. It's a picture. It is still on the other side of the room. And then we slowly start bringing that picture towards you. It's getting you used to something step by step. And the same thing happens in the Marine Corps. Like some of the things I did there, I would never have done, pre-joining. But then you're around a bunch of people that are all pushing the limits. And it's just phobia training. It's phobia exposure. The more you're around something, the more comfortable you become with it, right? So maybe it's a little bit of that too, that it's not necessarily negative. It's just something that naturally happens with people. You always see the images of the guys working on some high wire 1,000 feet up, and you're like, oh, fuck that. He probably was fuck that at some point himself, but he's been doing it so long now that now it's not a big deal. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you just get used to being in more extreme situations. So that becomes more of a day-to-day part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the other part, too, that kind of might factor in also is just the separate... Like, I kind of sometimes, like, whether it was like sexual assault or just other things... Because I would hear all this crap, and I used to, when people would argue, oh, the Marine Corps has got such a problem with this and whatever, it's the worst, the military is so bad about this, and I would just say to them, like, the difference is that instead of taking kids, so you've got kids, you've got first of all, what's happening on college campuses? You're taking the youngest, let's take a similar subset of the population. You can't compare all Marines that are 18 to 21 years old on average to general society, but instead you need to compare it to other kids that are 18 to 21 and just away from home for the first time. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden that disparity comes apart. And I was just thinking about what is the taking them away from home aspect? That now this is my first time away from mom and dad. I'm living in the barracks. I'm 1,000 miles from mom and dad. And now how much am I going to behave differently because of that? Fewer limitations on reputation. Your reputational limitations are different. You know what I mean? What do people think of me? Well, what are my buddies here going to think of me instead of what will my family think of this thing or whatever before it gets back? Of me hooking up with so and so or doing something incredibly stupid, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of that too.
Yeah.
It's a weird environment when you're a kid.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird thing to go through. But so I don't have, I guess, the strongest opinions about Memorial Day, but we should probably
talk about that.
I don't know if either of you guys have a really strong opinion or just an outlook on Memorial Day.
I was just realizing at this point it's more of a Marine Corps birthday episode than a Memorial Day
right?
episode.
Now I don't know. I used to get really, really worked up about reminding people of the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day.
One of those,
you know what I mean?
Huh? No.
No, yeah, I was. I mean, I'm not going to deny it. I used to just be like, don't thank me on Memorial Day kind of thing. I don't know if I don't really bother with that so much anymore. It used to be a hang up, like, I used to, yeah. That was one thing that I thought that I used to have, was that there's a reason these holidays are distinct. Now more and more, like, Veterans Day is a whole different topic, but yeah, I think Veterans Day has kind of been contorted from what it originally was to something different, but at least, yeah, I'm also the same. I'm still that guy a little bit. Like 4th of July is the day we celebrate friggin' independence. I usually call it Independence Day. Like I'm a stick. I don't know. Like words have meaning, damn it, kind of thing. Guess I've always, yeah, that's across the board. I'm an asshole. What do you want? What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I don't really have strong opinions for much of that stuff. I didn't join the military, the Marine Corps, for like strong patriotic opinions anyways, or anything like that. I just did it to fucking go nuts and kill people and, shake things up in life. Yeah, even on Memorial Day, even if they don't know it's for the deceased and they treat it like as if it's a Veterans Day, I really don't mind. Because it's all coming from a good place. Anybody that wants to do that,
Yeah, I've mellowed on it a fair amount, at least with that too.
Yeah.
What's the other thing too that I always feel guilty. We used to be better about it. So I'm in the DC area. I used to live closer. I'm in Baltimore now. I used to live closer to DC, and as it happens, not the one guy, the one guy that we were all friends with on my third deployment that got killed is in Arlington. You know what I mean? So we would usually use it as a time to get together. You know what I mean? Like more often than not, it's also as it happens, my grandparents are in Arlington. My dad's a Vietnam vet. He's already got his plot picked out kind of crap, so when I was a kid, like I didn't know any cemetery other than Arlington because that's where all my grandparents were buried. You know what I mean? I'd never been to another cemetery. So, it was very normal for my dad to take us on Memorial Day, typically to his parents' graves. And then it just kind of became part of the norm too. And the difference was then I would go like see my buddies and, share a pint or whatever. Like somebody would be there, like throughout Memorial Day. Whenever I showed up at Bill's gravestone, there would be some other buddy of mine there, and we would chit chat for a while and, toss a drink back or something. And then, so that kind of colors it, I guess, for me a little bit too, is like that weird proximity and that it being part of like a regular ritual to go to go to Arlington already.
Right. And childhood memories of it and a grounding in it and a connection to it. Like for me, nobody in my family was military at all. At least not in that sense. So I didn't really have any of that. They still respected it. I think the way most people do of, hey, this is the day that we respect the deceased or the fallen and blah, blah, blah. So maybe that's why I don't have quite such a strong connection to it. And I'm not right next to Arlington,
Yeah. Yeah, it's well, at the same time, you know, not to make it all gloom and doom, but like the weird part for me too, and I think I'm seeing it on your shirt, Walt. Did you play lacrosse?
No.
What's that on your shirt?
It's Seaburn dad shirt.
Oh, really?
Return to sender. He's wearing a
It
gas
looks like
mask.
his.
He's got
It looks like
a
what's
lacrosse stick with a
okay.
with
That's
a
what I
gas
thought.
canister in it.
Okay, all right. I was like, I know I saw a lacrosse stick there. Well, so I grew up. I get the. It used to be the NCAA lacrosse championship was always at University of Maryland on Memorial Day weekend. So, well, Sunday. So usually, so Saturday was like semifinal is semifinals, and Monday is always the finals. And it used to always be at University of Maryland. And I grew up playing lacrosse. I'm a douchebag, just, you know, whatever. I coach JV now. So that was always a part of it too. And that was always the barbecue and fun part. There was like, it wasn't like, oh, you can't barbecue and have fun. All you have to do is mourn all weekend. You know what I mean? It was like, we would go to the tournament, have a tailgate, it's always such a beautiful day too. Like there's you can't blame people for really enjoying it. You know what I mean? We'd go barbecue, have a tailgate, and then like on Sunday usually I guess is when we make a trip down to Arlington or sometime Monday morning, you know. But I think it's good that people enjoy it, you know.
I think it kind of went away from, not for everybody, but like for the country, from actually like what you were talking about, Scott, and meeting up with your buddies and stuff like that, more of just a national government holiday, where now it's kind of turned into more of a military appreciation day in some senses for the most of Americans who aren't dealing with friends actually dying or having someone to actually mourn or remember. But I guess that's really my thought on it. I don't know. I think the best thing we can do for Memorial Day is quit sending kids to pointless wars and try to stop having people to remember for shit like that.
That kind of goes back when we were talking about earlier is Memorial Day is celebrating the tragedy of the plebes, right? Kind of thing I threw out there. Even if you're, anti-establishment and anti-military and war and all of that, I think you can still celebrate Memorial Day, because what you're not really paying respects to, you're not paying respects to some, government or some military campaign. You're paying respects to the idiots that got thrown in as cannon fodder to support it, right? And the tragedy that they had to go through. So maybe that's what we should do, is try to turn it into why the fuck are we doing this?
It's hard to do that when you're looking at like the right political spectrum, because they just tie up anything anti-war, or if you say anything bad about the military, then all of a sudden you just hate America. But I think that's getting better, but that's kind of the issues that I run into it talking about shit like that, because then people just find me disrespectful almost, like I had a video talking about Yemen, and Walt threw it up on his Facebook, and somebody was like, I kind of liked what he was saying until he said something about Iraq being better if Saddam was still there. It's like, I'm not saying I liked him. He's a horrible person. I'm actually kind of glad he's dead. I am. But then we also funded Al-Qaeda up in Syria, who broke off and split and became ISIS. And not only that, but when I was in Iraq, it was, I think, 2008. And I was not one of the Haditha Marines, but I patrolled in Haditha all the time. And you can just see the fucking destruction that was caused there. And it's like, you think that the United States military rolling through and fucking doing everything we did is better for the Iraqis than just having a shitty dictator? I'm not saying it was good, but we can't fucking help. And with the thing happening in Russia, the point that I just try to get across is, like, I've been there, I've seen it. We have examples for the entire time I've been alive. We have examples of the U.S. pretending and trying to say that we can make the world a better place through our violence. And after everything we've done, it should be fucking obvious that we cannot. So anybody flirting with war because somebody else is going through a bad situation somewhere in the world, it's like, dude, you got to realize, like, I get that you care about it and you want to help them, but like the military and the United States government's violence will not fucking make the situation better. It'll make it worse, and that's...
Yeah, it's almost like you have to preface anytime you say something like that with, dude, I was in the military, I fought in these wars, I did this, so that you have some sort of standing, because then in their mind it puts them in a conflict, right? So do I trust the Marines and whatever that have gone through these, or do I, fully believe in the war, right? And so which ideological thing do they hold on to stronger? You think it would give you credibility that, like, look, I've seen it and it's fucking stupid and we shouldn't do it,
Yeah. This actually reminds me of sort of, there was not a huge drama, at least not in the States, but, the British and like Canadians and Aussies do like the poppy thing around veterans, like the whole month leading up to Veterans Day.
Anzac Day.
Yeah. And they all buy the red poppy and it goes to their like equivalent of the, Wounded Warrior Project, basically. And some people, I guess, starting like during World War I or immediately or like shortly after, some people started wearing white poppies, and it was supposed to be like for everyone, not just the troops that died, but for everyone. Like you're sort of talking about, Dane. Like, yeah, I'm trying not to. We'll give him it when I'm finished talking.
I'm just messing with Aaron. Go for it.
You know what I'm going to say.
So like, but it one of the things like, and then but so like one of the things that happened, I think, just this last Armistice Day was for the first time, like the BBC allowed broadcasters to wear something other than the red poppy, which is the traditional one. If they wanted to wear a white one, like all these different, what is the white signal? Everyone that died, not just the veterans, but not just the soldiers that died, but the civilians that were caught up in it too. You know what I mean? Do they deserve to be memorialized? Because that's not part of our Memorial Day, but should it be? Is like a kind of interesting question. And then I'm also just thinking, I think it was a scene in The Office, and I think there's a meme of it somewhere. Like it's like, to the troops, both sides, and everyone like is like, what the hell, you know what I mean? But honestly, if you think about it, like how many of the guys that got killed in like either OIF 1 or in the Gulf War, which is some poor bastard draftee that wanted nothing to do with it, you know what I mean? Like it kind of like sucks for them too, Like, but somebody would look at you like you pissed in the Kool-Aid if you mention that. Like, I feel bad for those conscript bastards on the other side we murdered too. Yeah,
like in Iraq when we were doing the initial invasion, and we captured a guy, and the guy was a fucking cobbler his whole life up until the U.S. invaded Iraq, and then ominous dominus. Now you're a soldier. Go out and fight and kill. That guy's a poor bastard. You know what I mean? He was thrown into a situation. And the whole idea of Memorial Day, too, where it came from, was after the Civil War. And even back then, Memorial Day did both sides, the Union and the Confederacy, So I don't see why you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
It's because we need to hate the enemy and see them less as people. So if we start acknowledging them as actual people, and like, you were talking about that guy in Iraq. It's like, these people aren't our enemy, really. They're like, we invaded their home. What the fuck do you think they're going to do?
It's our aristocracy fighting their aristocracy.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just the fucking pawns in it.
Yeah. But we can't acknowledge that they're actual people.
Don't you love... My favorite thing is when people are like, we should have like a 2 or 3 year mandatory service thing. And I'm thinking of like all the volunteers that I managed during my last few years in the Navy, and I could barely get them to function. Let alone, like, can you imagine conscripts?
I don't understand how it works, because it seems to. I mean, it's most of the history of military. Like, now, granted, things are more and more technical, and you can't really force somebody to learn something. It's a difference if you're like, hey, you need this rifle and you need to know how to shoot it to not die. That's like an entirely different thing from being like, well, this is how you maintain a diesel engine on 7 tons or whatever. Do what you're told.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think you're seeing some of the breakdown of that when you try to have a professionalized military, let's say like with Russia. I know they tried to professionalize, but there's still a certain proportion conscript, you know?
Yep.
I think we're seeing some of that breakdown that when you really try to have this technically advanced military, as Russia's sort of tried to move towards, that doesn't really work with like, I wonder how much that's it. Like the Navy's very technical.
They're doing the Israeli model. The Israelis are highly technically advanced. That's probably their number one strength is their, is the technical side more than anything, and they run a full conscript. I personally think it's stupid, and we shouldn't do that here, right?
Singapore as well.
Yeah. Well, and that when I mentioned that one thought before you came on, Aaron, but basically I was saying like it's getting around to this idea that the military is sort of a Jacobin in the sense that like it's a nationalizing force instead of having what we used to have when it was volunteer militias that would become integrated into an army just during time of war. It became this starting in in the early 1900s. It became this nationalizing force. It started with the Rainbow Battalion in World War I and saying, "Hey, you're not the Tennessee Volunteers anymore. You're part of the American Army generally." And mixing people up from different places, and you're going to live at this base in North Carolina for the next 4 years, and that's going to be your new home, and you're away from your family, and you're not part of a battalion where everyone from back home knows you. That is probably, I think, intentionally meant to fight is meant to counter federalism, I think, and it also serves as that nationalizing influence that gets people to play along with these other things we're talking about. And I think that's what you get with like a conscript force. It's why I think with Israel, and that's what some of these people want. They hate local loyalties. They want national loyalties. And so they love the idea of conscription. Like there's plenty of people on the left that love that idea,
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's another institution for them to kind of, do their thing with.
Yeah. I mean, well, you missed the whole part we were talking about all the social engineering they do through the military also. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Oh, I love those PowerPoints.
For
PowerPoints shortly followed by instruction.
For the listener, I'll point out that we've been joined to offset the serious jarhead energy going on in this episode. We've been joined by Aaron, former Navy. He's here to insult the Navy while you guys insult the Marines. So, hey, Aaron, you want to introduce yourself? Well, first, Dane, you want to wave?
Do I want to wave?
Yeah. Would you wave so he knows who you are? All right.
Oh,
and then
hi,
Josh.
Aaron.
Josh, he's top left for me. I don't know where he is for you. Oh yeah. No, I had an intro for Aaron. Oh, I muffed it. Aaron's here to talk about Manx cats.
Well, just cut him out.
Yeah. No, actually,
cats.
excuse me. It was Marx and Lenin or whatever.
Oh yeah. I'll talk about that all day.
Anyways, yeah, Aaron, you want to kind of give yourself an intro? We're doing a little different on this one. We're introing people up front instead of holding it for the last.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm Aaron. You can find me at Punished BTWA on Twitter. I'm a co-host of the Timeline Earth podcast. I did do 9 years in the Navy. I got out in 2019. 5 years on a destroyer, 4 years instructor duty. I made E6 off my advancement exam, and then my EAOS was right before I would put it on. So technically, I got out as an E5. It's funny, like you guys might appreciate this. When I got my exam results back, my chief was like, "Oh, does this change anything? Like, are you gonna re-up now?" And I'm like, "No, if anything, this like cements it. I'm getting the fuck out." A brand new E6 showing up at a new command. Does that sound like fun? Fuck that. So yeah, that's me. I kind of came into the dissident right, I guess you could say, libertarianism, while I was in with Ron Paul and reading Ayn Rand and coming at it from that direction. and got into Rothbard and Hoppe, and then kind of branched off from there into some crazy shit like
Post-Marxism.
yeah, yeah, reading Lenin and Julius Evola and James Burnham, and I don't know what the hell I'm on right now, but yeah, it's been a wild ride. I love looking at different angles different angles of analysis, ideological angles, I should say.
So what do you think about Memorial Day?
Oh yeah, Memorial Day. I mean, I used to get the day off. I'm a 1099 now, so doesn't do me a whole lot of good. Like I said, I kind of alluded to it earlier. It's another institution for whoever the dominant cultural force at the time is, to brand it whatever they want it to be. So, if they want to make it about, asking the question, well, should we memorialize civilian casualties? And that's a good question. And then from there, it'll go into like maybe not quite a good question, like, well, should we memorialize civilian casualties of color? And then should we memorialize trans civilian casualties of color? And then it's just kind of the direction that it goes. And in the context of Memorial Day, you'll see. I'm sure they'll integrate some type of social activism into it. If you go to your local parade or whatever.
And frankly, I'm surprised it hasn't already.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, I wonder where it would be if the support the troops wave of. Well, this is hard to imagine, but imagine like without the 9/11 like patriotism wave that kind of made Memorial Day, I think probably more would it have just been forgotten about as a holiday? What would that world be like? I don't know. But kind of also thinking of how much would social SJWism, whatever you want to call it, all that. How does that not affect it? Is it just because it's the holiday of the right, sort of, or?
Yeah, that might be it. It is kind of a right-leaning holiday. I think any type of patriotic, pro-military, at its core, celebration would be inherently, at least right-leaning. So maybe that's why they just haven't gotten around to infiltrating it yet, in any grand scale. But it's coming.
I'm kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are on, and maybe you just touched on this one and I missed it. What your thoughts are on Memorial Day being made into a 3-day holiday? Do you think how do you think that's affected it? Made it more popular, maybe, or more known?
Like integrated into a three-day weekend? Yeah,
it's on everybody's tongue. Whereas it, like, if it was, say, President's Day and you don't work for the federal government, you wouldn't even care, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if anybody had any.
I think it has probably helped with the culture of making it more of a fun type barbecue-ish weekend or holiday, because now people have more time off. And, well, if you have a 3-day weekend, it's not like a hard time for you to go and spend time with friends because you lost somebody, you're just going to do something fun because it's typically a beautiful day out, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about, like, every once in a while, somebody that I know from when I served,
maybe
maybe
the SJWs aren't messing with it because they don't want to ruin a good thing.
Yeah.
They want to ruin all good things. That's their purpose.
Yeah, they want to ruin
everything good.
Maybe they haven't decided how they're gonna what kind of paint job they're gonna give it. I don't know. But, like, I don't know, like, as far as utilizing Memorial Day for its purpose of, like, remembering, people you've lost, especially for veterans, I do that randomly throughout the year. So, like you said, Memorial Day for me is mostly just, barbecuing or whatever, going to a party.
Yeah, one of my buddies died after we got back. So, but after that happened, like on the day he died,
the pool's all open. You gotta take the kids.
that's another thought I just had. The pool opening thing. Memorial Day seemed like much less of a holiday when I lived in Florida because the pools are open year round. Here in Maryland, that Northeast, Northeast, it's Memorial Day to Labor Day is the beach and pool opening holiday. Everyone goes to the pool on Memorial Day because it's the first weekend they're open. But like Florida, it definitely seemed like less of a big deal, specifically because like that summer had started 2 months ago. You know what I mean? Who cares? We got the beach all year, you know?
I forgot that's when everything typically opens.
I just opened up that BBC article and there it is. There it is.
What does the purple poppy mean? To remember animal victims of war. The black poppy, remembering African and Black and Caribbean.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Subdivide it into more and more different, meanings. And there you go, Aaron. This is the wave of the future.
Yeah. Yep.
I think
a literal paint job.
I think I'm going to do actual show notes for this episode, and if I do, I'll definitely throw that in.
Coming soon to a Memorial Day near you.
Well, I got a shepherd's pie cooking upstairs, so I can't stay too long. However, what else you got for me?
I was half expecting you to eat it on air. Timeline Earth style.
I should, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were just about to stomp away up the stairs and bring it back down and start chowing down.
Yeah.
Turn my gain all the way up so you can hear every chew.
That's half of why I was late. Is I was stuffing a sandwich in my face as fast as I could before I came down. Should have just. If I knew you would have been here, I would have done it in your honor.
Yep. Gotta keep it high quality.
Sweet. Yeah. So Aaron, since you're, there we go, and he's back, or he's gone again. Anyways, we'll figure it out. Aaron, since you're, two thoughts. Do you have, or two questions, I guess? You have a story about a time you embraced the suck, or are you like me and did no preparation? As a rule, which is my
No, I was thinking about it, and for the last year and a half I was in, at that point, my ship that I was on, where all my friends were at, got home port shifted from San Diego to Hawaii. I was stationed in San Diego, but while that ship was there, like those were the guys I went out with. Those were the guys I hung out with, drank beer, did all the gay shit with. And so when everybody left, it was about a year and a half before I got out. I had just broken up with a girl I'd been with for like 4 years. Like her kids lived there. Like we had our little house together. She left, and I was like at that house by myself, just working 9 to 5, going back and forth to the schoolhouse every day, and like just the same routine every single day, coming home to an empty house. And like, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but like that shit fucked me up. Like coming home to an empty house for like years it was fucking like, it was bad. And I didn't really have a social life, and my family's on the other coast. And so that whole year and a half was like, it was pretty bad. I wouldn't say, I don't know if I embraced it, but yeah, it was just, the isolation, and then like the monotony, and then like the apprehension about, making a giant critical life choice, like a career choice. Yeah, that was, it wasn't the worst thing, but like it was not fun.
I can relate to that actually a lot. Like right around the time. So when I was E5, I was at Quantico. I was dating a girl. We were contract married also.
Yep. Get that bitch.
Yep. I didn't want to have to, I was in Northern Virginia, man. I was breaking the bank. I was using my whole paycheck just to sublet a basement rather than live on base because I had a dog. I was a reserve. Like I had a dog. I tried to, prior as an E5 a few years earlier, but then there was the big get the sergeants back in the barracks movement. I just missed out on this. So Quantico was taking the lead on all the sergeants back in the barracks. So I previously would have just been able to get BAH from where I was and whatnot, but they changed policy. So I was just like, well, I can't, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm not giving up my dog. So I'm going to live off base and just like, piss away money just on rent. And so I but all that to say, I was dating this girl. And actually worked out about as well as a contract marriage that is also a relationship could work. Because when we did break up, I was down in the dumps. But this Master Guns that was in my shop apparently had gotten divorced weeks earlier or months earlier, and nobody knew. He was married to, like, we knew his wife, and we just hadn't seen her in a while. But he just like locked into work. And as far as like embracing the suck goes, that was one of those things that like, oh shit, like he just like went and handled his business quietly on his own. And I just leaned right in. I took that as my model for like the way you're supposed to handle a breakup is like, say no one, nothing, work harder. You know what I mean? And part of that was like, I always fought tooth and nail against jumping through hoops. I always wanted to like be the Marine that got promoted without going to corporal's course or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. Screw NCO. Like I'm good enough at my job. Like I'm going to make sure that my, like, these other aspects of me are good enough that I'm going to get promoted without jumping through your BS hoops. But then like some switch flipped around that time where it's like, screw it. I'm going to go to Staff Academy and I'm going to get the best damn score there is. Like just to prove that like all along I could have gotten, you know what I mean? I just, but that was sort of a like, I've gotten a little bit better since then in a weird way about jumping through bullshit bureaucratic hoops. And that was like my sort of embracing the suck. It's like, look, they're never going to go away. And the more you fight them, the harder you make your life. You know what I mean? Yeah, bureaucracy kind of broke me on that. I used to just try to like get promoted in spite of bureaucracy.
That's always been kind of my go-to cope is like pouring myself into work. And that's like during that time. Yeah, I'm the same way. I stayed late. I came in early. I took on like a couple collaterals, and I ended up getting like a early promotable recommendation for like my second to the last evaluation. I'm like, hey chief, like I'm planning on getting out, and he's like, I know. I'm like, all right, because they can only give so many of those, so it's like, why are you wasting one on me?
Trying to get you to stay.
Yeah,
trying to kiss your
part
ass
of it. Yeah,
the grass isn't always greener on the other side, boys. You might want to think about staying.
We're all agreed. We're just going to blame this on Aaron, though, right?
Yeah, obviously.
We don't even need to bring it up, and I can just jump into what I was going to say, and then it could just be edited, so no one even knows anything happened.
Hopefully, that's putting a lot on my editing skills. We'll see. We'll make it go. Yeah. But if we do reference it, yes, we are blaming Aaron. That's a fact. Okay. Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, go for it, Dane. I forgot where we were at.
I was saying it's too bad that Aaron jumped off right now when he said that, because it reminded me of when I was a kid. My dad took me to a World War II thing. It might have been on Veterans Day, but there was a bunch of guys who fought in World War II, and it was all Marines. And there was a Navy guy in the audience, and he was trying to, be cool or whatever. And he was like Vietnam era. And he was like, well, the Marine Corps is just a department of the Navy, right? And this like 80-year-old man was just like, yeah, it was the men's department. The other guy just shut up and sat down. And what made it awesome was that this guy was like 80 some years old, telling him, no, we're the men here.
Right.
Fuck off. Yeah, when he first came on, I said, I was going to say, well, we needed somebody to be the bottom. So that's why he joined in.
Oh,
too many tops around here.
Yeah.
Have you all seen the new? I just saw the thing. Hold on, let me see if I can find it again. The new Marine Corps order on like hairstyle and whatnot.
No.
I saw that on Reddit the other day, and most of the stuff that was in there I thought was already a thing, except for the do-rag thing.
Yeah, there were a few. I mean, yeah, it was
like new maternity uniforms. You can wear black, green, or coyote brown socks.
Yeah,
like a bunch of little shit like that.
A lot of dead Marines because of that.
Yep. We always wore black and green. Did they change that at some point?
It was only black in my time.
Oh, really? Yeah, we wore black or green.
Yeah, anything other than black would get you shit. Didn't matter if it was like a discrete, whatever, a drab color or anything. It was.
And we could wear the tan or the green skivvies as well.
We only had green. I only had green.
Just green?
Yeah, just green.
Most of the time we didn't even wear skivvy shirts.
Wasn't there something about like your hair bun size could be an inch bigger or something? Your hair mass, I think they called it. Yeah,
they called it hair mass. Which
I said for men is 3 inches, which I always thought it was 3 inches on top. It was a max. It was a fade from 0 to 3 inches.
Yeah.
It said that, but they never let you get over.
Oh, we all did. It was like, and 3 inches is a lot longer than you think. It's a big ass mop on your head.
Yeah. Yeah, we had guys my hair was already thinning by the time I was 20. So, that was the only time. So I started shaving my head when I was in high school. It was my parents always gave me a damn bowl cut when I was a kid, and then
Mine too, man.
And then of all things, like it was part of hazing and like for JV sports was everyone had to get their head shaved. So like during tryouts, like there was a team dinner, and then they would take all the freshmen downstairs and shave their heads. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden I went from like, it was that mop top holding me back the whole time, because shortly after that, like a girl actually took interest in me, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. You know what I mean? So
never grew hair again.
Yep, more or less, except on my first deployment, like all the cool kids were growing their hair out because nobody was giving us shit, and there wasn't really access to a barber or anything. You know what I mean? So we were just getting like, a trim on the sides and calling it a day. And I tried to grow it out. That's the only time, like I almost got to 3 inches in the course of like 7 months. And then I came home literally for my 21st birthday. My sister bought me Rogaine. She's like, that's thin. You got to do something about that.
I didn't lose mine until after the Marine Corps.
Oh, yeah?
I'm starting to get there. I don't like it, but...
Yeah, I just started thinning up front, and I'm like, well, fuck it. We're done now.
Yeah. Fortunately for me, it's kind of always been my MO, so it wasn't really that earth-shattering. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, I guess I'll just go back to shaving it again. No problem.
Mine's thinning out back here, and it doesn't look that bad at the moment, but I swear I'm not going to turn into one of those guys who just pretends that they have enough hair to keep growing hair. So, I prefer having hair, but when it gets to the point, all of it's going. When I was a boot, I would just shave my head all the time because I didn't want to pay for a haircut every week.
I'm afraid I might step on my dick here, but Walt, is that hat because you're hiding the thin spots, or?
No, it is not. I got hair for days. I need a cut right now, to be quite honest.
I always felt sorry for poor bastards that did that. Like, I get it. Some people have screwed up head shaves and they can't really like pull off going bald. But like, I always felt bad for people that like just like wore a hat everywhere because they couldn't just be comfortable with the fact they were losing hair. You know, like just man up, man. It's I don't know. Embrace the bald.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Don't hide from it.
I remember the day
you don't love me at my worst. You don't deserve me at my best. Right?
I remember the day I realized that I was thinning out. I was at a pool down in Texas, and all of a sudden my head started burning. It's like, what the fuck? And then after that, I noticed. I was like,
well, it's weird. Yeah, head sunburn feels different. It doesn't feel quite like it's like yeah, it's a feeling I learned early.
Yeah, I've never had to deal with that for sure.
I'm gonna have to jump off here in a minute.
Okay. Before you go, one more thing. Do you have a podcast to recommend, or
no
for the listener?
I thought you were talking about my own. I was just gonna pretend. You mean somebody else's that's
other
smaller
than your
than
own?
mine?
Other than your own. I don't think anybody has a podcast smaller than yours, do they?
Mine probably. Just because
I'm just messing with you.
It's been on the rocks for a year now.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's been on ice for I just keep saying I've given up on saying someday. There is a someday I will reinitiate, especially if I just do what I said and just give up on the editing part and just record them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or not like I was doing like the intensive editing. Just do the long form. Let the people talk and record it and then play it back. That I can do. I could talk to somebody for an hour and a half every few weekends and put that out. But I was trying to do the short form thing, and I think I should get back into that soon. But I've been saying that for a year now, so I'm going to stop pretending it's happening.
It's a really cool idea, man. I think you should go for it.
Oh no, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. It's going to come back. It's just a matter of when. And in the meantime, whatever following I had dwindles. Although occasionally somebody follows my Twitter for that podcast, and it must be because they're listening to old episodes.
Oh yeah.
So that's good. These people are still finding it somehow.
Yeah.
When Veterans for Voluntaryism kind of faded out, that was about the same time I was starting the Obtainable Freedom Project. But in that time in my life, I completely got offline entirely, and I basically completely got out of my own life too, and I just stayed at home and focused on my family. So I've been doing a lot of work. Like, if you go to my website, theobtainablepreedomproject.com, there's a whole bunch of stuff on there, but I disappeared from everything. So it's just that nobody knows it. So there might not be a smaller podcast than mine, because I haven't even tried to really push it out into the world. Well, no, when I read that those were the 3 questions, it made me think about that. I was like, I don't think I know one smaller than my own.
Yeah. Same.
It's what I get for disappearing for like a year and a half.
But what is do you have one that you regardless of size that you would recommend to the listener that's not represented here? Just because a lot of times when people listen to podcasts, obviously they like hearing recommendations and stuff, and I didn't know if anybody had something to pass on.
It's been so long since I've been listening to anybody, so I don't even know the smaller ones that I listen to if they still exist. But one that I did listen to for a little bit before I moved up to Iowa from Texas was Homesteaders and Homeschoolers. It was just a guy that was homesteading and homeschooling his own kids. He would have other people on to talk about that. And like, I mean, we homeschool our kids. And then the homesteading thing is something that I'm trying to get into. We had a little garden last year, and we're going to... I want to have a ridiculous garden this year and can as much as I can and start learning how to produce our own food. So at the time, I learned from that guy. I don't remember his name or anything, but there was that one. So.
Cool.
What's the...
a podcast nobody's ever heard of, though. It's okay. But Biting the Bullet, I would check that one out.
Yeah. Speaking of retards.
Who?
Yeah, hopefully they're supposed to hop on. We'll see if they can make it. They had a scheduling issue, I think.
They probably fucked up time zones again.
I think the first time I was ever going to record with them, we fucked up time zones.
It happens.
Yeah.
Happens to all of us. Instead of abolishing daylight savings, we need to abolish time zones.
I've wondered about that. What do you think that would work, to just go off of Greenwich Mean Time or something? Or whatever it's called now?
I mean, I think it would work like converting to the metric system would work, in the sense that most other countries could probably do it, and Americans would be like, fuck that, no way.
Not invented here syndrome.
All right, guys. I got to get out of here. Nice meeting you, Josh.
Dan.
Good talking to you guys.
Good to see
Thanks,
you.
Dane.
I don't know how to leave here, man.
Yeah, I think that was my problem.
Thank you for listening to this episode of How I Embraced the Suck. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend. And as my Girl Scout den mother used to say, stay frosty.